Good afternoon, everybody. Sean Tate with Tate Public Affairs. I think I mentioned that already. It's really nice to be here in Philomath. I grew up in Corvallis, so this is a very familiar community to me. I used to ride my bicycle over from Corvallis very, very early in the morning, help my buddy Mikey out with his paper route, picking the papers up at the Wing Sing, right? Why is that funny? What do I need to know? So, long gone, right? No, but the memories are fresh. The memories are fresh. Yeah, we had a good time. It was great having a best friend here. I went to Corvallis High, and from there, after about 6 years in that building, I left. And as a joke, it's only 5. Community college. After that, journalism school. I had no interest in politics or policy. I took a job in the newspaper business and went that way until the newspaper business about killed me. That's where I met the wonderful people at Bashful Bob's, who I have known for, oh my God, since you opened, right? In my days of the newspaper business, I was their ad rep for the Gazette-Times. Same newspaper that fired me from my paper route, but that's a different presentation altogether. Okay, so that's Philomath. Right? At least I'm pretty sure that's what Google Earth said. That is about where we are right now. Right? Okay? No? Do you want me to redo this? Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about why it's important. Avery did a really, really good job setting up the conversation. Happy to hear we have an elected in the room. Mr. Mayor, 2 electeds in the room? Raise your hand, electeds. My apologies if I've missed. It's good to have you here. Appreciate it. You're all about. This is all about you. So be careful. Take notes. Okay. This is the quote that got me into this job. All right. That's Pericles. He was apparently a brilliant guy. Somebody wrote it down. I think that was smarter. Just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean it won't take an interest in you. It couldn't be possibly more true. And here's some examples as to why. Who cares about taxes? Oh, 3 of you. Good. Okay. Fantastic. Well, as you guys probably know, we started a legislative session not that long ago, January 17th. My life's great right now as a result of it. There have been 2,337 individual pieces of legislation introduced. 375 of them have the word tax in them. Okay, doesn't seem like very much, right? 543 have the word education. 237 say housing. 581 have something to do with human resources and labor. 1,118 have the word healthcare in them. It's great for me that my lobbying business specializes in healthcare and higher ed. It keeps me busy, very busy. 609 say business. Right now, I'm not a math whiz. I had to take college algebra a bunch of times to get a D. But if you add those things up, it's closer to $4,000 than the 2,300. The reason why is that there are education bills that touch on tax. There are tax bills that touch on business and labor, so you can see there's a whole bunch of crossover. But the point of this slide is, right, you're in it, right? Everybody in here that's a business person, everybody in here that's a citizen is already involved in politics and policy, whether you want to be or not. That was my realization, so. 10% of these are going to become law. That's the way this thing gets whittled down. You put 2,500 bills in there, and at the end of 6 months, you get 2,500 pieces of legislation that somebody signs and puts into law. So there's a lot of whittling down that happens. Another factor, does anybody remember Jackie Winters, former senator, deceased Jackie Winters? Absolutely one of my favorite people in the world. I saw her give a presentation at Salem at the Salem Chamber of Commerce, and somebody asked her, I didn't hear the question, but I heard the answer. If you don't tell us what's wrong, we will assume everything is okay. I think if you take nothing else away from this conversation today, take that away. You've got to engage with your elected officials. You got to tell them that's why they're there.
You're doing that already.
That's good. That's what we want. Everybody's going home with these slides too, so this is good. I'm proud of you. Senator Jackie Winters again. She's fantastic. She's greatly missed in the halls of the building. Let's talk a little bit about policymakers and policymaking. A few things about our friendly policymakers in Salem. They are likely not experts in what you do. They probably all have jobs. It's probably not yours, right? So they have a different set of expertises, a different expertise anyway. It's a very hard job being a policymaker. It's a lot more hours than it looks like. Even when you think they're not working, they're working because they're getting calls from people like me all day long, all summer, all winter. You know, this is the life of an elected official. It is way more hours than it looks like. There are incredible political pressures. I don't know if you know this, but when you get elected into the Oregon State House, the first job you have is to be a fundraiser, right? Everybody wants you to raise money. Everybody wants you to hear their story. Everybody wants you to love their problem more than you love somebody else's problem. Dozens of groups want attention. I mean, who's been to the Capitol in the last, thank you, who's been to the Capitol pre-COVID, right? Most of the people you see walking around in that building are lobbyists, policymakers, and folks from interest groups that are there to be seen and have their messages heard. And legislators have to make a living too. Generally speaking, these are not incredibly wealthy people. They're not up there just because they're bored and have nothing else to do. They're up there because they care, right? They have some ideas about how they want to see things work, and it's quite a sacrifice, to be honest. So, here's a little bit about our policymaking process. It's complicated by design. You guys have all seen the Schoolhouse Rock thing, you know, how a bill becomes a law. Pretty much, right? Legislative concepts are drafted, bills get dropped, they go to a committee. They either get heard in a committee or they don't. If they don't, they're dead. If they get heard, they get to move on to either a full House or a Senate vote potentially. And if it's successful, it goes to the other side of the building, right? It's very complicated. And then there's amendments, and then there's back and forth, and there's days people don't like each other and all that stuff, and politics is hard. And this is the other side of policy making that people typically don't see, and that's where the agencies get involved in things. The agency of responsibility, since I work in healthcare, Oregon Health Authority is typically who I work with. If they're given statutory authority to write rules and implement a policy, then they do it. And it's an incredibly challenging and can be frustrating thing at times because there's no legislative oversight. There's opportunities in rulemaking for the bill's intent to be misinterpreted, things like that. So we have to pay attention through the entire process. Here's a few takeaways from this, right? You're already involved, okay? Politics has found you. Policymakers are people too, and policy making is complex by design. So, questions? You can just raise your hand or throw something at me if you want to get my attention, but we'll move on. So let's talk a little bit about a meeting with a policymaker, right? This is really important. You get 15 minutes, typically speaking, with most policymakers in the building. You have to be prepared. You have to be ready to tell your story. You have to be ready to show where it hurts, the specific issue that you're suffering, and the pain that it's causing you. You have to be able to show and tell what happens if we don't fix it, right? You're trying to make this something that's relatable for policymakers, make it something that they can care about as well. Bring an answer to the problem, right? Policymakers, like I said, they don't have all of the answers and they don't do what you do for a living. So you've got to bring them some solutions that they can get behind. And then talk about a coalition, right? Here's who else cares about this issue. There's strength in numbers, right? If you've got 20 organizations that have the same frustration, it's a little bit more powerful than one. This is something that carries over from my days in the newspaper business. Facts tell it, feelings sell it. I can't tell you how many times I work with clients who want to combat emotional issues with data and spreadsheets. And I've never seen a spreadsheet make a politician do a thing, right? It's just not how people make decisions about what they want to care about. You have to make people feel what you're feeling in order to do that. They care about their policy issues. You've got to make them care about yours too. That is not my dog. But because my dog doesn't do baths well. Lather, rinse, repeat. Keep working until the problem gets the attention that it deserves, right? Strategic follow-up after you've had a meeting with your policymaker. Invitations. Get them to your building. Get them to your facility. Get them. They want that. That's why they want to meet with you. They love tours. They love to put their hands on things. Any progress that you make, tell them about it. Answer every question that they ask you. Make sure that you can become their resource. I think it's a real special moment when a policymaker calls a client and says, hey, what do you think about this bill? Or what do you think about this idea? That's when you've become, right, a person that they can count on for information. That's really important. Engage legislative staff. If you don't get a meeting with a policymaker, talk to staff. It's their job, and they're very, very good at it, referring that information back to policymakers. They love their jobs. The policymakers make sure that information gets passed along, so don't miss opportunities to connect there too. Again, coalitions, building legislative interest and support. Ask anybody who else should know about this. It's one way to build your coalition. Certainly talk to the policymaker about it as well. Keep working your issue, right? The rule of 7, right? Everybody's familiar. It's either 7 or 10, depending upon whether you were in the newspaper business, the TV business, or the radio business. But you got to say your message 7 to 10 times. Somebody's got to hear it 7 to 10 times before they're going to remember that your message is important. I say keep going until your bill passes. Don't stop at 7. Don't stop at 10. Okay. Speed bumps. When I started in policy making, there was a bill everybody laughed at that was to regulate the height of a speed bump. Right? Right? See, but it could be important. It's never been important enough to get passed. It's been in the legislative arena for several years. There are 4 bills this session to regulate the height of a speed bump. Don't give up. Don't give up. People change, politics change, situations. I'm not kidding. It's House Bills 2096, 7, 8, and 9. I looked at them last night. It's crazy. So that's why I say you don't give up, right? Because eventually somebody likes your idea, in theory. Policy change takes work, timing, right? It is politics, okay? It is people. It is very situational, and it's very transient. Be urgent and be patient at the same time, right? Know this is going to take time, but be urgent enough to be present, focused, and effective. Prioritize your mission, build your coalition, and a small win, right, is still a win. That speed bump bill hasn't had a work group or anything yet, but if it did, that would be progress. And you take that because it's a step in the right direction. Policymakers are just people. There's no pedestal. They'll tell you the same thing. They are often more nervous than you are, especially the freshmen, the newly electeds. They don't know where the good bathrooms are yet in the building. They haven't figured out any of that good stuff yet. Keep your arguments and your discussion simple. Make good points. Ask for help. If you leave the room and don't say, help me before you do, you've kind of missed your opportunity. Okay. Keep advancing the problem. A small win is still a win. And then do it again. Lastly, if you're really nerdy about this stuff, and I look around the room and see nobody is, but if you are, Oregon Legislative Information System is how you find information about committees, bills, processes, procedures, what's happening today, what's being voted on tomorrow, all of those things. I warn you, if you go there, you may want to become a lobbyist, so plan accordingly. Oregon Legislature website is general knowledge about the people that represent you, the committees that are out there, who's on them, agendas, all of those things. Really good places for you to visit just to familiarize yourself with conceptually a little bit more about what we talked about today. And I think that's my last slide. So does anybody have any questions for me or comments or concerns? Anybody really worried now about healthcare bills or taxes or anything like that?